institutions for her vocational service to law enforcement and the people of Jamaica. The government of Jamaica awarded her two national honors, the Order of Distinction, Officer Class, and the Medal of Honor for Meritorious Service. The Canadian government recognized her advocacy for individual outstanding commitment to advancing gender equality in Jamaica, enforcement and the people of Jamaica. The government of Jamaica awarded her two national honors, for which she received the Gender-Based Violence Prevention and Response Award. She also has a certificate in gender-based analysis, plus from the Government of Canada.
A Justice of the Peace, a charter member, Paul Harris Fellow and past president, my apologies, of the Rotary Club of Manor Park, and IEP Positive Peace Ambassador, a Rotary Caribbean Peace Activator. Miss Grant believes in service above self and continues her advocacy and volunteerism to help transform lives and communities across Jamaica and the region. Ladies and gentlemen on the platform, put your virtual hands together and help me welcome Miss Noblet Grant, OD, JP, MAMS, BSc, and retired Deputy Commissioner of Police. Miss Grant, welcome to our program, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's not quite, is it quite evening? The sun is shining where I'm at, so I look away off. Good evening, yeah. For some reason, I was having a little trouble getting on. I normally get on platforms 15 minutes before, but Corporal Fennell know that we have had some cock-upsy, so certain things were not in line as they should. But I'm happy to join you. So I know you normally just jump into your Q&A. Started that way. But I told Corporal Fennell that I would prefer to take a few minutes, since you are on until about 7:30, you said, to kind of give a refresher for those who know it, and probably you have people on your platform who have not, who may be joining for the first time. And even if you have done it before, in my view, there are some things that we need a reminder to set the context for our conversation. So I would love to share my screen with you for a minute to just remind you of some concepts. Absolutely. Is that okay?
Yes, madam, please do.
All right, good. Are you with me on my screen now? You see my,
Yes,
are you seeing it?
We are seeing your screen, madam.
All right, good, thanks. So basically, we're going to be talking about sociocultural factors that perpetuate the whole business of abuse. But because there's so much confusion around some of these terms sometimes, and I want to try and get it as clear so that during the Q&A, I hope we will facilitate the participants being able to ask questions themselves, clear up things, not just the host, right? Even though the host might be the one transmitting the question. So it's not a lot that I'm going to do. I'm just going to tell you give a quick little introduction to domestic violence and abuse, talk about cultural beliefs and norms, because that is the context, in fact, when we talk about these sociocultural factors that perpetuate abuse. And hopefully, help you to figure during the Q&A, we can talk about what can people do. And if you're looking at even at the bottom of the agenda, you can see some of the things that are part and parcel of the whole problem, the verbal abuse and so on. But let me just move quickly to what domestic violence is. Just to remind everybody here, it's interpersonal violence, right? It's not war, right? That we know like what is happening in Ukraine is people-to-people violence. Unfortunately, we live in one of the regions of the world, Latin America and Caribbean. That's the way the multinational organization that does research and funding and whatever, they always put Jamaica as part of Latin America and Caribbean, 12 countries. And we have we are recognized for having very high levels of interpersonal violence, unlike some other places that would have terrorism. We don't have that problem here. So what is it? It is an intentional, systematic, and systemic pattern of violent, controlling, coercive behaviors on the part of a perpetrator. And they do it with the intention to punish, to abuse, and ultimately control. Listen what they're trying to do. The thoughts, the beliefs, and the action of the victim. Because in these kinds of situations, there's an imbalance of power. And domestic violence doesn't happen among strangers. It doesn't happen amongst acquaintances. Those are different categories of interpersonal violence. So domestic violence happen amongst people who are in marital relationship or who have blood relationships. Right? So that is why it can happen between spouse, intimate partner, whatever we call them, and people who share blood, because it can happen amongst parent and child and so on. And so, when we talk about domestic violence, please be reminded that it includes physical violence, that is where people batter people, either using their fists and hands or they use weapon like stick or whatever. Sexual violence, and that happens to partners, sexual, like marital spousal partners, can in fact force themselves on their partner where sex is concerned. And one of the areas that we don't talk a lot about is incest. There's a lot of incest going on in Jamaica that remains underreported. People don't want to talk about it, and it's happen between parent and child, and it can happen with siblings doing it to each other, right? So we need to remember that. And then we have to remember there's emotional and psychological abuse, and of course, financial abuse, where people use money to control each other. And so when we talk about domestic violence here now, there's always a caveat that I remind people that it is a choice made by the abusive person to use violence, whether it's physical or non-physical, to solve their problems. So physical and non-physical violence is part of domestic violence. And we know that in our region here, 1 in 4 of our women do experience domestic violence in a lifetime. For the world, it's 1 in 3. All right, just to remind you. Now, so you might hear the word violence, you might hear the word abuse. Just to remind you that when we talk about abuse, we're not talking about a disagreement. We're talking about treating somebody with cruelty or violence, and it is intentional, and especially when it is done regularly or repeatedly. It means that you're meting out cruel and violent treatment to a person or an animal. And you might say, why animal get in there? Because many times within the context of domestic violence, people will ill treat and harm the pets of the other person, right? That of the victim. And so abuse is when someone intentionally causes us harm or distress. And so when we mistreat or misuse other people, that is abuse. And showing no, we will do it because we show no concern for their innate worth as a human being. When we abuse people, when we use violence against people, it means that we are degrading their well-being. We are doing everything to ensure that their well-being is undermined. So we just need to remember those things. And again, it's the same thing, just looking at the concept from two different angles: violence, domestic abuse. There is a perpetrator, there is a victim, and there's an imbalance of power in the relationship. And we know that it is the perpetrator who ends up having the most power in that relationship. And of course, there's a consistency in the pattern of behavior that characterize this relationship, because one person is systematically seeking to control the other person or persons. Because an abusive partner in a marital relationship might not only be abusing the adult, but could be abusing minors, could be abusing children too. And in directly, although once the children are present and are witnessing the abuse, they are also we take that they are being abused too, because they are exposed to it. So it's either they experience it directly or they are exposed to it. So and of course, we talk about the range of abusive strategies that they can use to create an environment of fear to control the victim. So they use threats, intimidation, coercion, battering, financial and emotional manipulation, and all of those things, right? So what is the context? Why do we have this problem? We ask. Because it is tied up in things that you hear people refer to as cultural beliefs and norms. And so we can ask ourselves the question: how do we get to be the kind of men and women we are? We get to be the kind of men and women we are largely because of the social norms that we are exposed to in our youth, right? By the time you're 7 years old, you are properly conditioned into the social norms of your environment, of your society, of your culture. Because when we talk about norms, we're talking about rules that tell us how we should behave, right? And so that is that. And of course, it comes with belief, strongly held views that we have, that we are passionate about, that we will defend, and we don't have to have any evidence to back up what we believe. Right? So we come up and we are told these things, or we observe these things, and out of it we create a belief as to how we ought to be. So that has a lot to do with it. And some of the things that we do in terms of our attitudes that come from our beliefs and thereby influence the behaviors that we display. A lot of it is unconsciously held. We are not even aware that we hold those attitudes, and therefore will behave a particular way. I like to tell people that come to the workshop about the 3 E's. Normally I tell them about the 3 A's too, but right now let us just focus on the 3 E's. So we all have an environment, which is a social setting in which we live or in which things happen or develop, right? And that includes the culture, not just the physical landscape, but also the culture in which we are educated or living, and the institutions that we see around us, and of course the people that we interact with. That is the environment that we have, and we know the various factors that we can pull out where environment is concerned. Then look at the exposure that we have. This is now us experiencing something, being affected or influenced by it. Normally, you hear they talk about exposure from a medical point of view. This is just, we are just exposed to generally a range of things in our environment that we see and hear, and we are influenced and impacted by, right? Directly and indirectly. And then what about this thing called experience? So we have events that we are actually living through, different experience, multiple events on a daily basis that we actually live through, as opposed to one that is imagined or thought about. So when we accumulate knowledge, understanding, and comprehension, we are able to acquire that through our personal experience, or we are learning it from the experience of others. And of course, we start with the family, and then our circle of friends and the educational and teaching spaces that help to facilitate human interactions. And of course, it's not just educational and teaching spaces, because we have entertainment spaces, we have sports spaces, you name it, all kinds of spaces out there that we interact and experience. And therefore, these 3 E's are something that are important for us to remember, because how we navigate these 3 E's again is based on the rules that are set and the beliefs that we have and the customs that we have inherited. So I just wanted to remind us of that. So going back to the same question, how do we get to be the kind of men and women we are? We're talking about essentially socialization, which is a lifelong process, and it has many layers, but we're not going to go through all the layers here today. But again, this is a general process of learning that helps us to develop the knowledge and the skills and the dispositions that will allow us to function effectively as members of a society. And each time as we grow, we have to start at home with that. Then we move to basic school or whatever they call it these days. And then we move to primary school, then we move to high school, and we might move to tertiary education, then we move into a job. Not everybody has it directly that way. Some people will probably drop out, not go to school for various reasons, or they are somewhere along the line, they don't follow that education process. But we also get into churches from we are young. So we get into different groups. And as we move out of home, we also develop, we are exposed to learning, and we again there's expectation as to how we are to behave. And so as an individual, my pattern of thinking and behavior, your pattern of thinking and behavior will develop through the interactions that we have with first the parents and family members and the community members and all the other institutions and groups that we join. And so over time, we acquire new ways of thinking. But the earliest form of socialization is the most important form, because by the time you're 7, you are basically set, your personality is basically formed, and you are who you are going to become to a large extent. Your mind and your knowledge, you pick up so much at that in that period of life that it is not so easy for some people to move beyond certain limitations that they may be conditioned to in that early period of life. And of course, as children, remember our exposure to our parental beliefs, the parental judgments, the parental criticisms, or it could be praise and encouragement and support. That will impact our own self-belief, our own self-esteem, and who we become. And so thus begins the pattern of thinking and believing and behaving. It can be a fear of not being enough, not being worthy, and not being capable. And things like that would fall under what we call ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, where instead of you being nurtured, right, and supported, it's about neglect and abuse. And when we look at what is happening around us, it is very difficult for us to deny the evidence that we are seeing, because we are seeing it coming out in people's behavior in terms of how we relate to each other. Even the way we communicate with each other, in many ways, is abusive, and we are not even aware that that is what is happening. So the effects of socialization is basically to condition the individual towards socially accepted behaviors through reward and punishment. And you'll be surprised to see how this socialization start very early in terms of how we treat people and what we reward them for, what we punish them for, what we criticize them for. And as you can see on the right side of this, at least for me, of the screen, you see some of the agents of socialization. And one of the reasons why I put anticipatory socialization there is because that is a process of practicing or rehearsing for future social relationship. And that is very important because some of the things that we see our children doing, they are doing it because they are copying from us. Because we know we grow up, you play cops and robbers, nurse and doctor. But you and I know, most of you on this platform, you are police officers. And you are seeing some behaviors from children that are not so benign anymore. You see little boys, little girls, mimic drinking, smoking, spliff, saying words that they don't even understand, but they're doing it because it is setting them up for future social relationship. And if they are being exposed at an early age, you can start to see what we are doing there with what we expose the children to and what they are experiencing. So to just make it clear, a little clearer, look at the look at this about this whole process of socialization, the cycle. So we come in the world, we are born, and basically we come in with certain things maybe coded in our DNA, but at the end of the day is the kind of behaviors and experiences that we have that we can start to learn oppression. Depends on how people, what they model for us, what they show us. And we learn the traditional roles of men and women, boys and girls. And then we move into the institutions, which is again the churches, the schools, and we get the messages. We have the media and the plethora of media that we have now. It's more than we can manage. There are just too many. And a lot of kids are exposed, and what they are being exposed to, there's nobody there to help them balance and explain it to them. And so all of these things that we learn from home, in schools, and from media, if this is what it's expected of you and you don't do it, then you get stigmatized, you get punished. Or you get discriminated against. If you live up to expectation, you could be rewarded because you're not all the time you get rewarded for doing what you are expected to do. You don't always get caught doing what they don't expect you to do, but at some point or the other, we are quicker to punish, discriminate, and stigmatize than we are to reward. And so we move on as adults and we carry on in silence, collusion, ignorance, guilt, self-hatred, violence, dehumanization, and the need to have power over other people. That is the part of the whole process. And so we go on and teach the next generation to promote the status quo. So when we do talks like this, what we're hoping is to start to get people to be a little bit more aware and to encourage people to go further in your journey of learning and growth so that we can break the cycle that this kind of socialization and start a cycle of liberation, or we stick with the status quo. All right. And in this process of socialization, I just want us to focus a little bit more on gender socialization, because especially now there's a lot of issue around gender, because you know that gender is not biological. Sex is biological. You come with female sex organs or male sex organs, and they assign a gender to you. If you have male genitalia, you're a man, and if you have female, you're a woman. Now, that was a two binary kind of gender for many years, and all of a sudden now you have about a few hundreds of them. The fact of the matter, though, to a large extent, society is still about educating and instructing males and females about the norms, the behaviors, the values, and beliefs associated with their biological sex. So we are taught from we are born how to socially behave in accordance to this assigned gender now based on the sex. And this is where we end up with problems because we start to have gender roles with attitudes. And these are a lot of these, these norms that govern these roles, they are unwritten, right? Nobody, you can't go pull on a book somewhere and say, oh, this is it. This is what people tell you. Is what you observe. Is what you see. Right? So we develop attitudes and around the social norms and behaviors and the values that are shaped by socialization. And we try to live by that. I remember I said, if you falter and don't live up to it, you can get stigmatized, discriminated, punished, and so on. And we learn gender roles through observation. And trust me, when we are young, observation is we probably are not as observant as adults as we should be. But children are very observant and they basically are able to do and say in imitation what they see adults and other people do around them. And of course, there's reinforcement. Depends on how we respond or react to what we see them doing. That is what that is what will be happening there. So what we learn tend to stay with us for life. And it shapes gender expectations and it shapes relationships. So, and I just have a note that remind people that people challenging now their biological sex and assigned gender and identify themselves otherwise. That's a whole different set of conversation for that. But we have to recognize that it is there because when you come upon somebody who is saying, I reject my assigned role, gender role, or biological sex, and I want to be identified as so on and so forth. No, the question is, what do we do as society? Are we going to punish, stigmatize, discriminate? So these are questions, these are issues for each and every one of us to start asking ourselves, where are we? So gender roles, therefore, has a vast array of behaviors, attitudes, and expectations that the society associates with being male or female. And as I said, that has changed to some degree. It has changed further in some societies than it has probably in Jamaica. And so we have these expectations about how male and female should behave, should think, and feel based on assigned gender. Men are expected to be strong, assertive, emotionally reserved. For example, emotional expressions are not encouraged, such as boys don't cry, and women are often pigeonholed into nurturing, empathetic roles. We are expected to be emotional and cry and so on. And so, research in Latin America and the Caribbean said these are some of the harmful beliefs that perpetuate violence against women and girls. There's still a belief that women must be submissive, to male family members in all aspects of her life. So if that is an expectation and you are a belief, therefore an expectation that this is how you will behave, and you don't do that, is it going to be reward or is it going to be punishment and stigma and discrimination? Men are expected to exercise coercive control, i.e., they are going to dictate and tell you how you should think, how you should feel, and how you should behave. And men have a right to discipline women for incorrect behavior. Women cannot deny their male partner sex. Sexual harassment is normal. We have a study in Jamaica that's a few years old. When I do sexual harassment, sexual violence and harassment, I use the data from that. It is about where there's a saying in Jamaica, it's just a little sex. Right? And not just a little sex, so yeah, go on so. As women experience violence because they are dressed provocatively. There are people who believe that still. All women should be mothers. If you're not a mother, you get abused, verbally abused, emotionally abused. You get called derogatory names. Girls are valued as wives, not as individuals. And as mothers, you will go about in Jamaica now, and people know your name, and instead of addressing you by your name, they reduce you to motherhood. Everybody want to address you as mother. So in your identity as an individual doesn't matter. And then they will say, oh, it's a sign of respect. But why can't you respect me still and identify me by my name? So these are some of the little things we have to unpack and what it actually means. What is behind those attitudes and those beliefs and assumptions. Heterosexuality is the only sexual orientation that is acceptable. Divorced women have less value. I don't know how. I don't know. Again, this is for the whole region, not necessarily for Jamaica. So I'm not certain about where that that last one land where Jamaica is concerned. Um. So where gender roles in Jamaica is concerned, though there are traditional views of masculinity and femininity that are entrenched in the Jamaican society. And again, this is research that says that these strong beliefs about masculinity are key drivers of violence of GBV in Jamaica. Over 70% of women, right? Sorry, oops. Lost my slide there for a minute. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, over 70% of women agree that men are natural household heads, and almost 1/3 state that violence between a woman was a private matter. That came out of the Women Health Survey for 2016. You can find that online for yourself and have it as a source resource for yourself. 1 in every 4 Jamaican women has experienced physical violence from a male partner. Almost half of women who have ever partnered with a male have been subject to controlling behaviors. And controlling behaviors would include, like, you have to say where you are at all times. You have to know where you are, who you're going with, where you're going, want to know who you're talking to if you get on the phone, what you are to wear. They start to criticize you, about your mode of dress, because you're wearing that because you want somebody to see you, right? Which again don't make any sense, because you live in a community where people will see you, they're not blind. But we know what they mean by you want somebody to see you. So it is almost saying that you're going out on the road to go look somebody, because you're dressing up, going out to basically attract the attention of men, and not just somebody to see is men, right? And so again, also traditional beliefs about women's role are also deeply entrenched in Jamaica and tend to relegate women to the domestic sphere of life and will often condone GBV. Now, I know for the police on this platform and probably other non-police who are here, that you come across more persons who will tell you on a one-on-one basis of being abused, especially women and some men, and then they don't want an official report, right? So even with surveys, sometimes I wonder how much of the actual lived experience is being captured in our surveys, because of this whole business of shame, silence, guilt, and so on. So although there is okay, 90% of the respondents reported believing that women should spend their own money and share authority with men in the household. The research is saying that although that indicates the prevalence of liberal views on the rules governing gender roles, it coexists with around 70% of the population, indicating that a wife should always obey her husband and is obligated to have sex with him. So you have almost two different kind of viewpoints, a traditional and a more advanced viewpoint, coexisting together. Also, there are more than 30% of the respondents who believe that women should take care of the house and family, and that it is natural for men to be the heads of the household. So the gender norms also interfere with the types of job that women can and cannot do, as there is a clear social expectation that they will be the main caregivers for their family, regardless of whatever is happening. And so these are some other things that tell you that Jamaican women from low income and rural backgrounds are more prone to expressing traditional beliefs with regards to the roles of women and men in society. And we can also worry about what that means for how they are treated when they express support for those kind of roles, what they will accept and think it is normal, right? And so you can see, even though women with higher levels of education tend to show more liberal attitudes towards gender equality, that does not prevent them from being in abusive relationship either, because education has nothing to do with these experiences, right? So again, you find the persons with less education having the traditional view that women should take care of their homes, and so primary education, 85.6% of them believe that. And of course, the views of older and younger women are also generally aligned with little to indicate that there's any change in that area. And again, toxic masculinity they like to talk about, it can be linked to violence inside and outside the household, posing a risk for a woman's agency. That is her ability to make decisions for herself in an independent way without somebody, she having to get permission from somebody, that I'm capable of choosing. I have the knowledge and the skills that gives me that ability to choose for myself. So while the gender norms can pair the idea of manhood with being a risk taker and the family provider in low income and poor context, this can be expressed through alternative toxic avenues like um, violence or criminal behavior. And of course, aggressive masculine identities associated with um, high cases of homicide and gang violence in Jamaica. And it creates traumatic experience for both male and female youth. And remember, some of these violence happen amongst family members, right? And it is also some of the other violence that are traumatic violence that they experience as youngsters that can push them towards gang membership, because they are not fully integrated in any family situation. So they go and look space outside, right? So basically that is that. And here are some of the other, just to remind, some of you know this already, harmful beliefs again, where we are taught about how to view manhood, women and girls. Be tough, don't act like a girl, fight back, do not show fear and weakness. Be mean and aggressive. Do not back down. Be strong. Be decisive. Do not ask for or accept or offer help. Do not cry openly or express your emotions. Know about sex. Have enough gal in a bundle. Be in control, meaning over women, and be a provider and a protector. That's how men are taught to view manhood. These are the attributes, the attitudes, and the behavior that they are expected to see. And for women, of course, we are taught to view woman, if you talk loud, you're aggressive. If you talk back, you're aggressive. You're not feminine. You must be proper and polite, nurturing and loving, passive and submissive. You must always put the family first. Must be good at cooking and cleaning. Be a virgin. Be sexy in bed, but not too sexy. And be emotional. You must cry a lot over everything. They expect that of you. And you're moody and you're indecisive and you're weak. And you must be smart, but not too smart. So these are some of the things that are expected of women. So when you look at this whole business of abuse, when you look at child abuse and neglect, bullying, teen dating violence, youth violence, suicide, sexual violence, elder abuse and neglect, intimate partner violence, you can see how all of them are linked together. And so these are a quick reminder of some of the social factors that basically get us into this business of violence and abuse. You name it, any gang membership, everything is tied back to the same root cause in many instances. So just a reminder to help the discussion. Over to you, host.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Grant. And you know, whilst you were going through your presentation, we were here just having some dialogue between ourselves. And one of the things that we're identifying is how real this information is and how much it speaks to the reality of our society today. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you were able to appreciate the information that you were just given. And we want you to know that you can get in on the description right now.
Yes.
You can either send your message in the chat, or you can use the raise hand feature if you have a question, you have a comment that you want to make, so that you can get in on the discussion. What we're going to ask you to do at this time, Mr. Grant, if you could just probably stop your sharing for us.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if there's any questions that you want to throw at this time. Now is a good time for you to do so. You know, that information that we just received just now was rich information, and there is something that stood out for me, Chantel. Whilst we were talking, we're looking at the 3 E's, right?
Yes.
Environment, exposure, and experience.
Yeah.
And we like to say that children live what they learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it comes back down to what you were saying about when a child gets to the age of 7, they have already been set in their ways. Their whole persona has already been developed at that age. And what it tells us is that
It's not the whole, but basically they are conditioned into a set of beliefs. Yes, and you see the personality is basically, it's just going to grow from there, right?
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
And so it is important for us to understand then, within the context of the home, that at that age, when we see certain behaviors, then we need to deal with it right then and there, and not say, oh, they're going to grow out of it.
Exactly, and this reminds me of a recent case that we had to deal with here at the office with a student. She was in grade 2, I think.
That's right, that's
grade
right.
2, and she was displaying some aggressive and violent behaviors, not just to her peers, but also to her teachers at school. And we see how this discussion so far has been giving us reasons to understand why is it that she would have been behaving.
So your starting point then, host, would be what is happening in the home. Because one of the things when we look at the children that young behave in a particular way, we come up with all kinds of explanation as to what is happening and say it's the child's fault. The child rude. The child not listen, the child not hear, in have no manners. But we seldom try to find out what is happening in the home. How abused is that child? You know, in terms of whether they are a direct recipient of the abuse, or are they witnessing people being abused around them? Are they being neglected? Because most of the behaviors that we see these children come out with is imitation.
That's right. That's right. And just as you said that, you are perfectly right, because whilst we delve into the situation, we met with the mother and we had an interview with the mother. One of the things that we did recognize is that the behavior that the child was perpetuating was coming from what she was seeing at home, as well as what she was being allowed to do at home. So the thing that she was doing with the adults at school, she was doing it with the adults at home as well.
Absolutely.
So, you know, you are perfectly correct in that. I do recognize that there is some comments in the chat.
The very adverse childhood experiences Miss Grant mentioned, yes, absolutely. I thought that came in as well, where it connected with that concept that was shared from your presentation, milady. So yes, the adverse childhood experiences, they do impact and influence the actions of persons eventually.
That's right.
Yeah. So they end up with a lot of trauma because some of these adverse childhood experiences are horrendous. I have been doing intervention in domestic violence from I joined the system even before there was a domestic violence act. Everybody know that I have been around from 81 BC in the police force, so that's a long time. Yes.
That's
And there
right.
was there was no DV Act then. And people come to you had to kind of figure it out. And the reality of it is that over time, between you get training and educated in the system, but I have come on individuals who present themselves as a model citizen. Everything is upright. So what you see on the outside in terms of at the workplace, you could ask for a nicer and better colleague. Somebody like that is you would say, oh, this person is so reliable. And so that person is what I call a street angel, but is a house devil. Because
Wow.
when they get home, they are they are virtual devils. And so they beat up on people at home, and on the face of it, people who know them will say, oh no, not that person, because that person presents such an image in the public that could be that person.
That's right.
But here is where you do it, where experience now will help you to do, is to recognize that some people who abuse are able to groom members of the public that they interact with very regular at the workplace and so on. And in the group that they are in, so it's not just sexual grooming that happens. There's a grooming that happens by a perpetrator of domestic violence, where what they do is that they will present themselves as being this caring partner who tries, and is the other person, the victim, the real victim, is being difficult, can't get on, nothing that we do. So when they come, they will put that situation to you. So by the time the victim gets the courage to speak up, nobody believes the victim. Because it's the victim that is a difficult person. You look how hard that person work. Look, whether it can be a male or a female, right? Look how hard that person do. They provide everything. They are this, they are that. And it try hard. But if you don't sit down and ask certain questions a particular way, that grooming can lead you down the rabbit hole. And I have had persons like that. And when we dig through it, I find that they have horrible experiences from childhood. They both were exposed to and experienced serious violence and abuse. And they grow up both physical and non-physical violence. I don't know that we recognize how powerful words are. Verbal abuse of children. It is done it is done in an unconscious way. We don't even know we're doing it. In bad, you see. And we start saying that from they start crawling around. We don't child-proof our house. And we have things put down. Children we are in that curiosity stage as a human being. We're going to touch everything, interfere with everything. And we start label that natural curiosity right away as bad.
That's right.
Rude. Stop it. You're not here. Look how much me I talk to you. And then we say it in a tone of voice that the child know we're angry. And then we start the slapping. And it grow to shouting. So that child is absorbing all of that. And so we start to damage that child, even and condition that child even before they are fully aware.
That's right. Wow.
And then you go out in the community now and people say, teacher say, you're not listening. It's triggering something in your head. Your hard ears.
Mhm.
You understand? So these emotional distress that we put our children to from a young age, it follows them through. We have a lot of stories around children who they're based on how parents isolate them from natural social interaction, for example, where they don't allow them to have friends. Because these are parents now who are authoritarian parents. And so these children are not able to interact with their peers with boundaries, obviously, because children need boundaries too. But they are just closeted. And so when they go to school, they spend a lot of time socializing because they have no other opportunity.
And that comes off as being disruptive.
You still have to see the point. You're sharp. You're very sharp. You're in the right field. You're very sharp.
So-
You're doing great.
And so what that does is it causes us now as a society and even in our education system to be in a position where we don't know how to appropriately respond to these behaviors when we are seeing it exhibited by the children, not fully understanding that really and truly we the adults are responsible for the children that we have created.
Children live what they
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
and
That's right.
Absolutely.
sometimes we think that children only learn what we teach them,
Mm.
not what we show them.
Do as I say, but not as I do.
You know, so
If it was some of the examples are the things that I can say. I don't say them on anything that is going to be recorded and put up and whatever. Because I go on it out there. Those of you who come to my workshop, you know I give you the real deal. But we do know that some of the behaviors that we hear from children as young as 3 and so on. The things that they say, they are mimicking. And it's either things, all right, I can't say this one. So 3 little youngsters, years ago, Dylan was with me, Miss Dylan was with me. We went over to St. Catherine, so we're seeking support to have workshops over there. And a gentleman told us about three little boys walking past him. And they were probably under about 10-ish. They were not over 12, they were not 12. And here the one that was quote unquote the ringleader of the 3. You want to see if she not give me a kick with her foot and take it. Now what is that boy talking about? When more kick with girl foot and take?
certainly not a lollipop.
Where did that come from? That is what he hears around him every day.
That's right.
So no, a member of the community hearing him say that, they are going to say he is out of order.
That's right.
He don't have no behavior. Him is this, him is that, him is the devil knows what. And we put all the responsibility on him 100% without anybody asking what is he being exposed to. What is he experiencing? What is the environment in which he's getting knowledge
That's right.
and information?
That's right.
Is it we love to talk about, there was a time when the village was raising the child. I don't know where we think the village is still raising the child.
That's right.
What we're not questioning is what is the village now? What has the village become? Because we all still getting our knowledge and our information and our lessons and our experience from the village. The village has grown bigger than when I was a child, because the village now includes social media.
right?
right.
And I'm happy
And
that you pull,
AI, and AI.
I'm happy that you pull on social media because as you thought about the village, that's one of the things that came to my mind. And there's also a question in the chat from, I think it's lawyer Bishop.
Bishop.
Lawyer Bishop,
Miss
why you
Bishop
hiding your face?
asking how does social media influence or
right.
perpetuate abuse that's present in our culture?
Okay, I know you guys see some of these videos. I have seen videos. All right, you remember we talk about some beliefs and some kind of ideas that are out there, harmful beliefs that are out there that help to reinforce gender stereotypes
Yeah.
about what man is and what woman is. You have seen some of them. Oh, okay. Is the host lawyer hush? Never mind. Because some people won't keep their mics on mute. Because- so the host have to take charge of it. I understand.
Bishop will get a chance to speak once you are completed with responding, madam.
Yes. Yeah, I have seen, for example, things on social media where people putting them up as if they are comedy. But it's not comedy. It's part of the belief system that flies around in this society, like encouraging women to basically rob men, fool them, treat them like them brings ATM, name them out, or have multiple men to pay this, the one to pay that, one to pay that. All those are things that are out there. I grew up as a child hearing them. They have not gone away. And then I was talking to somebody the other day. I know. Do you know of the idea of a group of people in the US who came up and called themselves incel, involuntary celibates, where they came about a few years ago now, and it's some males in the US who have some grudge against women because they are saying women are not allowing them to be with them. But from what I'm not an expert on it, but from what I understand about this idea of being an incel, is that they have certain women that they believe that those are the women they are entitled to get. Those women don't want to have anything with them, to do with them. At least that is how it started out in the early days. I don't know what it has morphed to. But people in Jamaica are also listening to reading those things, going on those forums and reading those things and participating in those kind of forums and taking those ideas. Because their idea, we already had ideas about being entitled to women, to have control over women, and it is being reinforced by some of the forum and social media.
That's right.
And what social media has done is created an ease of access to this. So we've seen it perpetuated more in our society and it's becoming norm. So we think
That's
it's
right.
normal to act and behave in this particular way. And that's
Yes, and it's not just adult men who are there, or younger kids.
That's right.
All right. So I was during COVID, a friend of mine told me about some third farmers at a particular school in the corporate area. Talking about farming a polycule. My bottom jaw board nearly reached me knee drop so low. Because few people, that we have this whole business of polyamorous relationships.
Right.
And there's a whole range of polyamory that goes on. So, yeah, we have multiple from monogamy to poly, we have many different relations. So when I hear third farmers that they're talking about farming a polycule, I was like, and then I remember the internet. Say, you see, because we forget that many children have unlimited access to the internet.
That's right. That's right.
And So I asked a number of people, have you heard after that? No, because I'm saying if them got dig up, I don't know how, I don't think they were researching polyamory. I figure they probably landed in a forum. Okay?
Heard the concept, I'm not curious.
And they get in there. So I asked some adults, even teachers, do you know what a polycule is? And for everybody on the chat, go read it up for yourself. Go Google it. Make chat GP tell you. You will remember for yourself. Because no, it's true. None of the adults ever heard about that.
Wow.
So it tells you that you see between COVID, you see during COVID when there was a push to get classes online and so on. I think that even gave more kids a greater access to the internet than they probably would have had. And there's no turning back. Last year, do you realize that last year, 2024, that it would be the kids who took sexy last year, would be the kids who are greatly impacted by COVID.
Oh, yes.
Not just them alone, but there would have been some of them who would have been first farmers, second farmers, whatever. Right. To be able to do sexy last year. The World Bank just published a report that says the percentage of children who passed 5 subjects inclusive of math and English. Anybody want to guess what the percentage was?
About 25%. I'm taking a guess here.
All right, good. Anybody else?
If anybody else on the platform wants to guess, let's look in the chat just to see. All right, somebody said under 10%.
Somebody say under 10.
Under 10%.
Yeah, it's under 10. Way under 10.
Wow.
So we know that violence impact our children, whether they witness it directly or indirectly, or they experience it. It was 4.9% of our kids that passed 5 subjects inclusive of math and English. Trinidad and Jamaica, the worst of the performance in the region. I mean, with the educational situation. It's a broad Latin America and the Caribbean problem too, but here it is. Now, when you think about children who come to school witnessing violence in the home or being the victim of violence in the home, sexual abuse in the home, and so on, how then do they come to school the next day and sit down?
And normal kids.
Exactly, and sit and listen and allow the teacher to
Yeah. They're going to end up bullying their peers. They're gonna end up creating so much disruptive behavior. They also end up with learning disorders, obviously. Right? They end up with psychological problems. So there's a lot of problems that face our children. The problem is all of these things just keep adding to the factors that perpetrate the violence. So we have the beliefs, but they are also being exposed to the attitudes and the actual behaviors. We have parents who, based on communities, who basically demonstrate to children and to themselves that violence is the most viable means of solving problems. So let me give you an example that I use. Say you have a family where you have little Johnny and little Susie in the home. And little Johnny and little Susie are squabbling and fighting and doing the usual childish stuff. Parents says, stop it. Behave on yourself. Keep quiet. So the parents going for authoritarianism right away. Shut up, don't want to hear no noise. Little Susie and little Johnny may very well stop for half a second, and then they start up again. And then parents get frustrated and whack both of them. Now, was that helpful?
Cannot be helpful because none of them got a chance to hear what's actually happening,
Or to express what it is that they were
you
feeling.
know?
There
So
you go. So because little Susie and little Johnny, something happened between both of them. Why they were squabbling, why they have that disagreement. There was something that broke the harmony that should exist between the two of them, and that is normal and natural in childhood. So there's a problem, there's a conflict. It's not earth shaking, it's just childish something, whatever it is. But because nobody asks both of them what is the issue, we just tell them to stop. And they are expected to stop because we said so.
Mm.
All right? When they fail to live up to that expectation, it might go from verbally start abusing them to now physically abusing them. Little Johnny and little Susie assume now that this is the way you solve problem. This is the way you solve interpersonal conflict. So when I go to school, that is the same way me going to solve amongst my peers. When I get into a relationship, because we have had students getting into so-called relationship, and they behave exactly the way the adults behave. Boy beating up girl at school who claims her girlfriend. Why you beating up the man's daughter like that? But they know that my father do. And so my father deal with the thing I had.
Your behavior.
There
And
you go.
this
So we can't get away from what is happening around us, the messages and the behaviors that the children are seeing. What gets rewarded, what gets stigmatized. Because one of the things that we do when we see some little kiddies imitating us and repeating some of the things that we say, we laugh and we encourage it and we think it cute. But that is reinforcement of a behavior that is not appropriate. So they go to school, and that is why they talk to the children that way. I have seen videos of children in conflict with teachers, and when you hear the tone of voice, under normal circumstances, an adult who don't have no idea about or enough awareness would say that that child is insolent and rude. They are not. They are just speaking in that is the environment in which they grow. Whereas little kids, there is no boundary between them and adult where communication is concerned. So they end up starting to talk from early. From they start learn to talk, they take on the tone and the mannerism of adult. And when they go to school, they don't know any other way to communicate except in that tone of voice.
absolutely. The issue of domestic violence is so complex, and I believe that if we are going to ever get anywhere, we need to start at the granular level. And one of the things that
Absolutely.
we are
And the reason why I start the presentation and I keep harping on children, one of the things that we must not do though is expect the parents who are unaware and who lack the skills and knowledge that they are going to be able to, on their own, turn around this issue.
That is
right.
exactly where I was going, because a part of the thrust in domestic violence awareness must have a component that deals with bringing parents up to speed with what is required of them.
That's right.
And how to resolve.
Current parents, but future parents.
Absolutely.
Because for ye, I tried from as far back as 2000 and when I just went to JCF and reform program. I did not look here, let me not go down that road. It don't matter. But one of the things that I recognize is that we need a comprehensive program of perpetrator education for us people in schools, because some of the things that we're talking about here can be packaged and youngsters be educated. How are we ending up with little kiddies sexually assaulting each other at school, even though legally, they might be under the age where they can be legally responsible for some of the acts that they do, but they are doing certain things because, again, they are imitating. And so we have these problems where nobody is there to educate them away from certain behaviors. When we were running the Youth Empowerment and Mentorship Program, where we team iPad for Life, we had a lot of success with kids, with high schoolers, because once we start to get them to look at things from a different perspective, get them to role play a certain behavior, introduce them to certain behaviors. It was surprising the 360-degree turnaround that those kids made. They made it on their own because it's like a light bulb went on. So we have to have so they are future parents. You know that while one of the research that is done in the Latin American Caribbean area is about early marriage, right? Where we are marry off people. We don't have early marriage in Jamaica as a thing, but we have cohabitation very early.
That's right.
Right? Them getting sexually active from a young age on one hand, and some of them end up dropping out and living with people. Some of it is because of financial pressure. Some of it is because of parents kind of nudging them in that direction.
Right.
Because I remember when my goddaughter was going to high school, her classmates, which was a few years ago, her classmates were surprised and shocked that she got financial support from her parents to get all her little personal care things that she needed. They were expected to hustle it.
The truth is,
Go ahead, yes.
just to continue on that point that you're on, Miss Grant. The reality is that you have a lot of parents in Jamaica who believes that once they have taken their children to high school, that is enough. Anything more that they want, they're gonna have to go out and get it on their own. And so that is in fact a reality, and that is why a lot of our young girls have to find older men to support them while they're going to college and turn to other things.
In high school, it starts with high school.
There you go. It starts from the high school as well. So
At the high school, after first period, they say, no, you're a woman. No.
That's right. Wow.
For boys as well, huge risk. Don't believe it's only the girls.
That's true.
Huge risk. Because when they are also expected to fend for themselves, easy for them to form them own little gang or get called into one of the more institutionalized gangs. Or if institutionalized gangs in the community recognize that they are basically, I don't like the word unattached, but there's no bonding with their family. They are neglected, so to speak. They become fodder. They mean that everybody needs attention. Because like we say in domestic violence, everybody, especially children, because even when you're adult, you need it. 3 A's: attention, affection, and acceptance. So if a child is not getting the affection and the attention and the acceptance that they need, they are also going to seek it elsewhere. And because we are very transactional, some of us, we want something back. And the most thing some of these little kiddies have is their body.
That's right. Wow.
Right? So you see the dilemma. So so when you look within the society, you see so many variables that push people towards being abused or being an abuser.
That's right. That's right.
You've said so much already, Miss Grant, and we are really grateful for you sharing. I want us to look a little more on things that we can do to address some of these issues. There's a comment in the chat, somebody asking, saying that we talk a lot about males being abusers, but what steps are being taken to assist males who are being abused to report and to give them the help they need?
One of the reasons why I started the DVI Care Center, for when I went, I've been doing this formally in JCF, from I started my career. First couple I got was they were in their 83 and 80. Yeah, serious octogenarians, both of them. Man accused the old lady of giving him born. At the time, I never realized that it would be because he had been doing it all his life. Because I figured he was senile. But I'm just leaving training, so what do I know? Nothing. But over the oh, when I start to actually do the training within the region, part of this whole process of since 1999, start to realize that one of the things that we don't have in Jamaica is anything formally set up for male perpetrators, for perpetrators generally, whether they're male or otherwise, to get help, some form of intervention. And finding space to establish things and setting up facility is not easy. So when I went to Era 5, ACP Era 5, there was a whole ID room that was not being used. I got it refurbished and started the first DVI care. And then we did Matscan and we did St. Thomas. And I would have left by the time you went elsewhere. So the idea behind that we need a space right across the island, and the most even though we are basically pressed for space within police facilities. If we can convert some little space where we ask, we train police, we train members of the community like justice of the peace and people from the religious community like the pastors and so on, and we could partner with with our colleges and university for the people who are doing psychology and those kind of and counseling and um those kinds of career to come and be volunteers, so that not just victims go there, but perpetrators. That was one of the things that I wanted to see happen, because some perpetrators are open to change. They have a mindset that is open to change. They are willing to listen and take responsibility for their own need to control other people. And I have come to uh, an understanding too that some of the people who you see abuse are doing it because of peer pressure. In order to live up to being a man, those man box ideas of being tough and strong and me in charge and so on and so forth, they end up perpetrating violence in order that they are not ridiculed as being soft by their peers. I've had cases like that. And those people that I have had intervention with, because it is reported, they have made changes in their life without a lot of effort. I remember it was within the system, and way back when, early days, even before domestic violence became a hot topic in the system and in the society. And I told him he was a violent person because he used violence to solve problem. And he was upset with me. If you're the sticky man, his ice water would have flowed from his brain. Because he didn't see himself as being violent. And that was not the image that he had of himself. But we had certain talks, and out of the conversation that we had, I challenged him about how he treated his spouse when certain things happen. And I said, here I am now loading you up and you can't do nothing to me. You have said self-control. Why you can't do it at home? And get him to start to see himself. He came down, wasn't so rigid. And then I recommended that he went back to counseling. Him and his wife, even go back to the person who married you, who marry you, because you would have had marriage counseling. Even that. And he didn't want to, but he brought his wife to meet me. We spoke with him. So about 14 or so years later, I saw him afterwards over the years. I ran into him and his wife. Actually, we were at a little function and he said, you know, you will never guess who is here. And he brought the wife. And they said from that conversation, never happened again. So sometimes people abuse also because they don't have conflict management skills. It's not because they have the psychological need for power and control over their spouse. So a lot of abuse take place for various reasons within relationship and within families. We do have people who lack conflict resolution, conflict management skills, don't have no problem solving skill, and believe that violence is the way to solve it. Where they have intervention, I have a number of cases like that personally. And I am not a professional counselor. And changes are made where people made that mindset, it went away. They realized what they were doing, that it wasn't helpful. It was not in their interest or the interest of their family or spouse. But then you have some people with that kind of need to exert that kind of power over people because they have drunk up the Kool-Aid that condition us to believe that men are men and they must be in charge and this is how they are to be. They have that need. Some of them are narcissists, right? Some of them are narcissists. So they have a whole heap of needs. So there are different type of persons out there who are abusing and are you could call it, if I could say it, maybe like almost on a spectrum. And some are there because them not have the skills to resolve them issues without violence. But they not, because in those relationships, one of the things you take to differentiate those kind of relationship too is whether or not fear is present. When there is no fear present, it may very well not be domestic violence because domestic violence is coercive, it is systematic. And there's this need that they have. So they might become easier or more amenable to take responsibility and change and accept responsibility and change. Some of the more hardened abusers, they will try and manipulate even you who are intervening because they are highly manipulative. And if you are not careful and you ever make the mistake of having that abuser with the victim in the same room, you will notice the victim will never say a word.
Shut down. They shut down.
Because when them get up and go through the door, what is going to happen?
That's right.
So we need to be aware of what we can do ourselves, and we need to be aware within our own homes. We need to when you those of you who are on here who came to workshops that I have had, you got a perpetrator and a victim checklist. That checklist help people to check their own behavior to see whether or not they are experiencing abuse or perpetrating abuse. It's been helpful for people to have that. Right? Also, we start in our homes, how we treat our children, how we treat our spouse. Hmm? And then how we go to work and also carry some of that same behavior and unleash emotional and psychological violence on our colleagues. So we can help people at multiple levels, but some of the more, I would say, the real, well, narcissistic type of abusers, those ones that, why? We need serious professional counseling. We need more of that. We need space where people can go. We need when people apply for protective orders in the court, that it is something that that they go to. Can't force them to participate, but at least we can try. That is why when we set up the DVI care centers, we had about 200 station pastors trained at the time to assist the police also in these centers so that they could help. And then we work with other persons who we know we can call back. So in all fairness, coordinated community response to domestic violence is something that is very, very needed.
Very needed, and I am seeing where it aligns with the different agent of socialization.
That's right.
The home,
Yes.
based on the discussion so far, the home being the primary is already being affected by the elements of domestic violence. So if we can introduce the other aspects of socialization, the church, the school, and put programs in these institutions that can help parents and students alike to understand the ins and outs of domestic violence, we are better able to resolve some of these issues that we are having.
Go ahead.
I really love that you mentioned about the laws and being able to get access and protective orders when protection orders when they are issued. There's a question that I have here. Do you think there is some sort of systematic failure that is biases in our law enforcement system or weak policies that can perpetuate the abuse?
One of the dilemma that we have in the police force, is a huge organization. Think about the pipeline that take them into the police force. Same environment, same set of experiences, same set of exposures. So we come in also, people come in the system with their own trauma. With their own experience. The domestic, we have to recognize and accept that we have abusers and perpetrators in uniform. That's one. So if you are a perpetrator and a victim approach you for help, your attitude is likely to be very dismissive and basically blame you, because that is one of the things that perpetrators do. They never accept responsibility for the abuse that they do. They say it is your fault. If you would just hear and do what I say, I wouldn't have to do this. And you need to do better. And they brainwash and manipulate and gaslight the victim into accepting say it's their fault. So, and if you're a victim in uniform, and you have somebody who's a victim come to you and you're basically, I mean, put up with me. I don't want to hear. I can't. First of all, I don't have the skill set to deal with it. Because you want to come re-traumatize me. So we bystanders. It's not just people in uniform. I start there, but say the rest of us are bystanders, family members, right? Community members, colleagues, co-workers, church groups that we belong to. We minimize and we are very dismissive of people's lived experience, and we shame them into keeping quiet. So they feel fearful, So we put them under what people call FOG, fear, obligation, and guilt. Because some victims are made to feel obliged to protect their perpetrator, their abuser, to guard the reputation, to not want the person to lose their job or get arrested. What going to happen to them? There be such and such in the society. There be such and so the pressure is brought to bear on the victim to protect the perpetrator, the abuser. And then they feel afraid because they have no support, and they feel guilty because of the pressure that is brought to bear on them. So that is my fault. The perpetrator already telling you is your fault, and bystanders basically making you feel that if you say nothing, you're going to ruin the person's life. You'll make them go to prison and so on. So the victim continue to suffer. We expect the victim to stop the abuse. That is the kind of attitude that we have in the society.
Wow.
It's very complex,
It is, and we are pressed for time, but the conversation is really interesting.
It is a web that has been weaved, and believe me, it is so difficult.
That's why we have a thing called the web of abuse. So you hit a good word
I know that.
Right.
And let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, you are listening, and I want us to just understand what is taking place here, and I want us to listen keenly, because when we come off this program this evening, I would love us to be going back to our homes, educated and being in a position where we can start to effect the change right there.
Absolutely.
So we have to start with ourselves, right?
Yourself.
Yeah, right. We have to start with ourselves.
And be willing to ask for help.
That's right. Definitely. Right? Because we are coming down to the wire, coming down to the close of our program. But the truth is we have been seeing the chat. The chat is extremely active. There are a lot of messages in there. We can't read all of them.
I didn't get to read any of them. Wow. Sorry, I probably took up too much time chatting.
There are a lot of messages in there. We have highlighted some of them, because we did bring them to your attention in asking questions on their behalf. But I just want to quickly open the floor to about 2 persons at least. Use the raise hand feature so that you can open your mic and you can go ahead and speak. Miss Bishop, all right. I see Mr. Luar's hand is raised. I know Miss Bishop may have something to say. I also want to take this opportunity to quickly acknowledge the presence of Dr. Philbert Emile, and he's a psychologist that is on with us here this evening. Welcome to our program, Dr. Emile. And I don't know if you...
So Dr. Emile can do a session with all these people too, man.
Definitely.
Indeed.
I wish I knew that person.
Right.
I don't see a picture.
It's there. You would have to look in the participants list and you'll be able to see. So
no, I'm looking around for
her. I want these 2 persons with their hands raised to be able to quickly give their thoughts. So we will start with Mr. Luars and then we'll come down to Miss Bishop. So Mr. Luars, over to you.
Yes, a pleasant good evening to you, Corporal Fennell, and to your colleague, and also to Miss DSP Grant. This is a very good
retired DCP Grant.
Retired DCP Grant. Oh boy, I think she left too early, But it was a good presentation, and Corporal Fennell, this school that I'm part of, I have problems like these daily. And, so I have to ask the good Lord for his intervention to really carry us through. But one final thing is that sometime last year, there was a young miss was going through something like this at the school, and the former acting dean of discipline, he brought it to my attention and so on. And this young miss, she was about to commit suicide. So what the dean, so what the former dean and I do, we take up this young miss and we nurture her as our own child. And funnily, she graduated from the school with a lot of subjects and so on. And the other day, I passed her out in Spanish Town. And this young miss, she was looking so good. Going to other institution, and I said, I called the dean, and I said, thank God we have participated in this young miss life, because
Yeah.
she really turned around. And I urge all young men on this platform, not the mothers, please be a father to child who suffer domestic violence at home, because you don't know later on in life what that child will turn out to be. And so it was a good presentation again, retired DSP Grant, and keep up the good work. Good.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your comment, Mr. Lewar.
Miss Bishop,
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank you
night.
so much. I was going to yield to Dr. Emil,
we can
as
take
my
Dr. Lee
senior.
afterwards.
Okay, good. It's nice to see you, Lady Grant. But
Thank you.
I have so much to say, but I like the anger of the presentation from the cultural perspective, the socialization, and all of that, because there was a time when I became fed up with trying to educate male and female in terms of trying to break the cycle of domestic violence. And I realized that a lot of individuals are set in their ways. It requires more than just empowerment and education. It requires deliverance, because some persons are so used to the violence. You take them through the court process, you take them through the counseling, and they go back. And your officers would experience this, where persons come and make a report, the report is taken, the matter is put before the court, and they come and end the matter in one court appearance, not having gotten any protection order or anything. Or they go back to the station and withdraw. So they go back into the same situation. It worked for a month or 2 or 3, and it start again, because the abuser is who he is, and he needs to be be transformed. So Dr. Emil would have done some training with the JCF and myself, and we're looking at it from a perspective where we need to look at it from breaking the cycle with the children. Because in my opinion, I
That's my
feel that
view
a
too.
lot of the adults cannot be changed.
I don't think that is. I don't think that they can't. Let me point out something that we never get to touch here. Leaving an abusive relationship, I think thing has frozen. Maybe because you need to come off camera. You get back your sound. If you're hearing us, come off camera. The leaving an abusive situation is a process. It takes about 7 attempts on average for somebody to permanently lose and that's by research, leave an abusive relationship. I have to think about the impediments to leaving.
Yes.
Because many of the people who are in abusive relationship and can't leave, as easy as we think about it, you have to think about the housing situation. Shelter
Correct.
is a key issue. Where do I go with my children?
Yes.
And even if I have a job, financially, it's not enough for me to go and set up an independent household. I've had so many of that. So there are a lot. I can't go through. Time is on us, as you said. I don't have time this now to go through the number of impediments that shows you what the process is. And also, when they come to court, remember what I tell you about FOG, fear, obligation, and guilt. Most times when victims initiate court proceedings, there are people who are on them, pressuring them not to go any further with it.
That's
That
right.
is absolutely correct. And a lot of the pressure, we are aware that a lot of one of the hurdles to addressing issues of domestic violence is even within the church, because they're expected to kiss and make up, and the whole issue of being submissive in a way that is not necessarily appropriate.
Yeah.
I don't even want to go there with this conversation, because I think I might be labeled as a terrorist, but you know what I mean. I feel strongly about it, but my focus is really on how do we get our children to better manage conflict, better resolve
You have to teach
conflict.
them. You have to teach them a certain set of. In other words, our education system need an overhaul.
It
Because we have
does.
to
It does.
provide our educators with the skills and knowledge required to deal with the kind of product that the society is sending to them.
True.
And I don't mean that product in a derogatory term. I
Yes.
mean, when you consider the trauma that the children come to school with, you have children who leave at home and go to school just watching parents stab up each other and turn up at school. Huh? Or who was molested the night before. And they come with all kind of issues. So we need an overhauling of the educational system to train people with certain skills and knowledge. And we also need to put certain core life skills on our curriculum.
I agree, absolutely. I'm a counseling psychologist in training, and I find it very
I need people like you to come to my workshop so you can become resource.
Anytime, I'm all for community, but the reality is, as a parent as well, what I've learned in my almost a year of the program, if I was to live again, in terms of starting a family, I would do a lot of things different with my own children.
Me too.
And I'm still working on my parenting skill, but I realize that when we have these sessions to empower persons, the amount of support sometimes is not what we would want, and the persons that need the information are not coming out to the sessions. Parenting best practices, empowerment session.
Yeah. Because
You
see this kind of training. I run a 3-day domestic violence workshop, and 3 days is merely touching the surface.
It is.
Because we do one focus. One of those days is focus on sexual violence, right?
Yes.
The fact of the matter, the program that we have from way back when it was less expensive than it is today, it was a 7-day program, and we had never been able to run it for 7 days because we don't have the wherewithal to run it for 7 days, even though it was being funded by IDB and various and CDB and various other institutions, and we cut it down to 2. And then because of the sexual problems that people are encountering in terms of violence and abuse, we took it up back to 3 days, and it's very costly. We want to go out of town more often. It is difficult. Anybody on this platform who wants to come, we're having a workshop. I think I'll have a workshop in June. So if anybody who hasn't come on one, I want to and can afford the 3 full days, you can give Corporal Fennel your name and number and where you're from, and you can forward to me and we'll consider it. Normally we can't do more about 35 or 40 people in any one go. So you know it go.
Thank you very much.
But we like especially community members. We like members of the community to come because it is like I was here, yada yada yada. But in the workshops, you get to do exercises, you get to do this, you get to do that, so that you get your own appreciation and understanding of the thing in greater depth.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to add, I shared my information in the chat because I do offer free consultation to persons who are experiencing domestic violence, adult or children, male or female. And once they cannot afford it, and I can guide them to the relevant court. And I know some of the officers would call me from time to time from the DVI centers to get assistance and advice for their persons who are reporting. So the information is there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let me see if I find it. If not, I'll get it from Fennel. WhatsApp it to me, Fennel.
I will do so.
Thanks.
Bishop is indeed
one of our resource persons. Give me the first name, please.
The one and only Anne-Marie Bishop.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Miss Bishop, for your.
You're welcome.
It's nice to know because sometimes people need somebody to talk to. I get a lot of calls from people I mean, knowledge of law enforcement allow me to guide them properly. But sometimes they also, here's another thing that we actually need where DV is concerned. Many victims actually need the support of social workers. We have one of the things our advocacy has to change from just seeing this problem as police centric, right? Because let me tell you why they need social workers. Forgive me for holding up some more of your time, but let me give you a real life case. This lady had to run away from a man. And that's why I want Miss Anne-Marie Bishop number and everything, right? Because it's very important. She had to run away from one parish to the next to escape a man who basically was threatening that he would kill her and essentially kill himself after. So she went to one police station and then give her, then brush it off, the usual dismissiveness. And then she went to another station. We wasn't getting it. They sent her to restorative justice, which can't help it. That's another mix-up that is going on. That again, anyway. So she a member of the community that she knew. And she told that person what she was going to. That person called me. And I was able to call an inspector and explain exactly what was happening to the lady. And say, get a statement from her and carry her to the court's office and ensure she get an order. Or at least send it back to the original parish so that they can go to court there. He went back to the original parish because that was where the man was. And he went to the court. They followed through from the station that I spoke to, and they got the case before the court. Guess what happened when they go before the court? There's an 8-year-old child involved. And the lady was not able to, in the court, when you don't have a lawyer, Madam Bishop, you know it as well as I do.
I suspect what you're going to say, because I've had a situation where they don't include the child in the application for the protection order.
But that is not even that. It's that the victim don't have a voice. Because you and I know the court run fast and the judges don't give them a chance, and the clerks of the court are not remembering that they are the lawyers for the complainants.
Yes.
And they basically leave them standing alone. So they don't have what it takes to address the judge in a way that makes sense. And many judges don't have the patience with them. This lady have an 8-year-old. She don't want to go back to the man. She want the protection order. The man come there and tell the court that, but she run from the house, but she leave her son there. The judge said, well, the man can't be that bad. So the 8-year-old must go back and be with the man every other weekend. Now we know that they use the system to get access to these victims. We know that. A lot of people in the court system don't know that. That's a tactic that they use. Right? They understand how to manipulate. I am a father who wants to be a father. I'm not being prevented. Because this woman is blah, blah, blah. But you see, the son that she run well leave is a 25-year-old man. Him hardly there because he work on sound system. And this perpetrator wouldn't dare go try to go carry him abuse to this 25-year-old. The little 8-year-old don't want to go. Bawling out her eye. And also, this man runs public transport. Him not even going to be there. So who is going to be there with the child? But because this victim didn't have couldn't intervene, couldn't advocate then on her own behalf. Couldn't advocate on her own behalf to the judge. The judge just brushed aside everything and said, no. And that's it. So I don't know that, because I was called to ask what can be done. And I was giving some advice, but we need to talk. So when I get your number, I'll call you and we talk. Because it's not even anywhere near here, but it's not so far. But
no,
you know what I'm saying?
We're still in Jamaica. So that's
exactly.
fine.
And this is what I'm saying. If we could, if when these people go to court, the social worker could be asked. There could be a social worker there that says, go check out what is the situation. Kara means report, come back and inform the court. But we don't have all of these kinds of systems.
Lady Grant, the resources are very limited, and we need to engage corporate Jamaica to finance some of these issues that we're
No,
having.
what we need is to be able to advocate properly to the government.
Yes.
And if we can't advocate when we don't know what the totality of people's lived experience is when it comes to these kind of crimes. Because you can't treat them the way you treat community and street crime. Homes are supposed to be where you are safest. When you go on street and somebody do you something, you run back at home. That is where you take refuge. But what about when you have the house devil in there with you?
This certainly has been a very interesting discussion, and Lady Grant, you have shared a wealth of information, and this cannot be just part one. So we are looking forward to have you again sometime down the line. What a discussion we've been having.
Yeah,
This has been
Dr. Email hand is up. Send me his number too.
I see Dr. Amil stand up. Stand up. Let me just say though that Dr. Amil, can we give you about 30 seconds? Just about 30 seconds to say something here, because I want persons to know that we have part 3 coming up on the 25th of May. Same platform, so you can look out for the information. For those who have it, you'll be using the same link, so you can keep the link, and it will also be sent out again. So we'll be looking on the psychological effects of domestic abuse on both the perpetrator and also on the victim. So you can look out for that coming up. So that's part 3 coming up on the 25th of May. Dr. Amil, 30 seconds to you.
Great presentation. Thanks for the access.
Thank you.
Here. All right, so I think domestic violence to a great extent, though, for the abusers, it is wired in the brain. So it is something that they might struggle to get over anytime soon. It takes a lot of intervention, and it takes a lot of rewiring of the brain. Those interventions must include a rewiring of the brain so that you can break that habit loop cycle and get them back to normal.
Agreed. We know that. That's why we said they need professional. You know, you have to think about the different levels of abusers and who does what with them, obviously. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Agree with that.
Ms. Grant.
Right, thank you guys for listening to me.
Definitely, and thank you so much for accepting the invitation to be here. And believe me, it was a wealth of knowledge and information that was shared and received here this evening. And I see persons in the chat, you know, giving their thumbs up, saying big thank you, excellent presentation. So ladies and gentlemen, we want to say a big thank you for joining us this evening, for sticking and staying with us. And we have been your hosts. I am Corporal Kester Fennell.
And I am Constable Chantal Powell. This has been another episode of Family Empowerment Program Discussion, where we're sharing on the topic of domestic violence, unearthing the factors that perpetuate abuse, especially the socio-cultural one. Thank you so much for joining us. Our guest has been Karen DCP Albert Grant. Thank you so much for being with me, and thank you for participating.
You're all welcome. And remember, if you want to come to our workshop, just give them your name and your number, all right? And we call you.
And we will be organizing that. We will be organizing that.
All right, good. No problem. Take
Ladies
care.
and gentlemen, have yourselves a wonderful
Okay, yeah, man. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody. Keep safe.
Good night. Bye, everyone.
Good night.